Welcome to Solosaurus, a podcast about one-player board and card games and giant thunder lizards. Solosaurus is sponsored by Stone Valley Games, your friendly, distant game store. Visit them at stonevalleygames.com. And now, here come your hosts, stomping through the underbrush, Michael and Martin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 87 of the Solosaurus podcast. I'm Michael Eckenfels.
I'm Martin Gonzalez.
And I'm David Turczi.
Hey! And today, as you can tell, we have a very special episode of the Solosaurus podcast because we are very proud and pleased to have as our guest one of the most prolific and in-demand designers of games, of solo modes, working in the industry today, David Turczi, as he just introduced ourselves. Michael.
Sorry.
Michael?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
I was handing it to you. It was a warm handoff.
I appreciate that. I will cut that out.
Hello, Michael. Are you there? Hello.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Do you want to cut it out? I would prefer to leave it.
While you're handing that back and forth, I'll just say that I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And now go ahead and do your stuff.
Right. Before we lose you, David, thank you for saying that. Appreciate it. All right. So thank you, David, and thank you, Martin. Thank you, especially David, for being here today. You're in the Netherlands, and we are in the West Coast and the Mountain Time Zone of the U.S., respectively. So it's awesome to be able to have this kind of conversation. So I want to thank Stone Valley Games, which is who brings this podcast to you, your friendly, distant game store. Check them out at stonevalleygames.com or look them up on Facebook under Stone Valley Games.
Hey, Michael, I just wanted to mention completely spontaneously that Stone Valley Games, as you know, Eric, the proprietor, always sends out a personalized note with every order that anyone buys from Stone Valley Games. And I just noticed that other online friendly game stores have started to do a similar thing. Now, I don't know if they always were or if Eric was the pioneer. I'm just saying I think that's a great thing, and I want to call it out. Yeah.
Yes, it is pretty awesome. It's nice to get that personal touch, and he definitely does that. I know of maybe one or two other shops that do that, but they're usually just really short, like "Thank you for your purchase," and it's handwritten, which is very nice. Yeah. You don't hardly ever get that anymore, but Eric does that every single time, and it's pretty awesome, especially because he includes a little gift like a coaster or a sticker or something like that. So,
yeah, it's just really cool. Thank you,
very
Eric,
nice.
And thank you, Stone Valley Games.
Thank you very much. So we always begin these episodes by asking, what have you been playing lately? And since David is our special guest, David, whatever you can talk about, I realize you've got a lot of things in the works and you might have some NDAs in place and cannot maybe discuss some things. So whatever you'd care to discuss, what have you been playing?
Well, I mean, I could talk about the work part endlessly, and the bit that I can say is Voidfall's late stage development and balance testing is well underway, and even I get a game or two in every week or 2 weeks, while our amazing testers are getting dozens and dozens of them in. But like these days, playing games is like the thing I have the least time for, sadly. I did have a couple of very rare moments in the past few weeks to play, mostly to try out. We've just moved house and just have a new gaming room for first time in a few years. So
nice.
Eagerly had to try that out. So played a Mage Knight with my partner Norley, and then started the game of Spirit Island, which we haven't yet finished. We always play cooperative together because otherwise I have zero chance of winning and I just feel stupid and sad. So we've taken to playing cooperative games together, and
nice.
My slowly recovering from COVID lockdown weekly game group, we've tried out Great Wall recently,
nice.
Mostly because I was very curious because like the one sentence elevator pitch for the game is very similar to our very own Perseverance, as long as you exchange the Mongol hordes for dinosaurs, and I'm sure that doesn't sound racist.
Nice.
But I was happy to say that A, other than the elevator pitch, they're totally not alike, and B, there was a lot of things in it I really, really liked, and a lot of things that were a bit more Ameritrash than my taste would prefer, but overall I had a great experience with it, and you know, it's not often that I can try out a game that I'm not 100% certain I'm gonna like and still come away with a good feeling.
All right, cool. You heard it here first, folks. Great Wall. David Turczi kind of likes it.
I'm sorry. You will rarely get more positive sounds about a game from me unless it's about Concordia. Oh yeah, I actually did play Concordia. Yeah, nice. I played Concordia too. So yeah, it's like when in doubt, play Concordia.
You know what? That's a note for me. I need to play Concordia. I've not played that.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, and Orleans as well. I need to play those two.
Orleans is nice. Concordia is like what's the word? It's like the mandatory course.
Okay, all right. I'll make a note of that one. Michael, go ahead. Sorry,
I'm sorry. I will keep interrupting you, and I will have endless thoughts on everything.
That's fine.
Orleans is like, it's nice. I like it. I have questions, but there was another game that came out in the exact same year and thus became a lot less known than Orleans because it was the second most successful back builder of its year, Hyperborea. And it looks like a dirty Ameritrash dudes on a map game. It is not. It is actually, once you get over the errata and the slightly imbalanced optional asymmetric factions, then it is a hardcore, solid Euro engine builder, which I find more strategic and more fun and more epic than Orleans. And it's the exact same genre. So if people tell you to play Orleans and you think you will like it, then go play Hyperborea because I think it's even better.
Wow, you know what? I am seriously getting pins and needles all over my body right now because I do actually own Hyperborea. I'm looking at it on my shelf right now. I've never cracked it open, so now my assignment after this episode is to get Hyperborea to the table. I'm very excited.
I mean, somebody asked me 4 years ago, and eventually I will let you talk, I promise. Somebody asked me 4 years ago, what's the one underappreciated game I want everybody to know of? And I answered Omega Centauri. And now 4 years later, we have Voidfall, which is a reimagining of Omega Centauri I did together with its original designer, Nigel Buckle. And if somebody were to ask me today what's the one underappreciated game I wish everybody would know, then I would answer Hyperborea.
Wow. Okay. I am very excited. Thank you for that. Michael, what have you been playing lately?
Well, not much. I've had a lot going on personally, unfortunately. Family stuff. I've been traveling. I've been doing... I brought games with me, though. I brought One Deck Dungeon and a couple of others, but I just couldn't get to them. I just couldn't get motivated. But I have found a little bit of time to learn White Eagle Defiant. It's a little war game by Hollandspiel about the German invasion of Poland. And it's a pretty simple point-to-point movement. There's not a big amount of counters. It's a very simple rule book to learn as well. And it can be played solo because it's a chit pull system. Now, normally it's a two-player game. There's not really a solo mode per se. It's just that chit pulling tends to lend a little bit more to playing solo because you just do your best with whatever units that are activated from what you pull to continue the game. And you know, it's a lot of fun. It really makes me wonder easily the Poles could actually win this game pretty easily.
What's the milieu? Which conflict is this game about?
World War II.
Okay.
It's the 1939 German invasion of Poland, and then the Soviet Union invasion as well.
Gotcha.
That came a little bit after that. So generally, it's one player is the German side and the Soviets and the Slovaks, because there's one Slovak unit in it, and at the time, and then the Polish side plays all the Polish units. So it's challenging. It's interesting just because it's simple, and Hollandspiel is a nice little mom and pop print operation. They are print on demand, so they do not have a stock. They don't carry it. If you order something from them, they print it immediately, and that's what happened when I ordered this last year. I got this and a couple of others, and I've been trying to get through my backlog, which is gigantic, as you know, and without buying ones, but I've failed at that recently. So I think you saw that.
Group. David, just FYI, a couple of episodes ago when we did like our taking stock of 2021, Michael just kind of went a little bit overboard toward the end of the year. He bought a lot of games. He's also as you can tell, he's traditionally a war gamer for a very long time, but he's now expanded his repertoire to more Euro games and
Yep.
less war game type. So
I
he's
mean,
go ahead.
I make it the thing that anyone who can handle heavy enough games, I want to have something to recommend for out of my back catalog. So based on what you're saying of the sort of games you enjoy and where you come from, my question is, have you ever seen Days of Ire or Nights of Fire?
Oh,
we
yes, we
just
have.
we just reviewed Days of Ire in our last episode, and we've
Yep.
had very, very nice things to say about it.
Yep.
Oh, thank you very much. Then I don't
Yeah,
have to sell
no.
it on to you.
and Knights of Fire is in our queue. And Michael, you did buy the expansion, right, to Days of Ire,
Yes.
so you can actually play the entire campaign.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to trying that. I got the Days and Nights Red Army pack, and
Play them separately first, and then once
Yes.
you got it nailed, then try it together. Because
Yes,
Nice.
otherwise,
Yes.
it compounds.
Yeah, I bet.
I mean, I already was completely destroyed by the Soviets and the SPA in my games, and I can hear you like grinning evilly. It's like, yes, exactly as I intended.
Yes.
All right, sorry, Michael. You
No.
had another thing you got on the table.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. It's a Battle for Stalingrad. It's a old title that was, let me see, I believe, got it up here, published originally by Six Angles and Hobby Japan, and then went to SPI, I believe, in 1980. So it's an older title, but then Excalibur Games redid it. Oh gosh, I don't know, about 5-10 years ago, something like that. So that's the newer version that I have. The map looks really nice, and it's got a lot of counters to it. It's pretty detailed battalion level simulation of the Battle of Stalingrad, at least in the central part of the city. And I'm a sucker for anything Stalingrad related. The battle fascinates me. The campaign fascinates me, and I just love games about it. So this one I put on a priority here to try to get to learn and get it in before I get to any other Euro games that we have outstanding to review.
So have you heard the new Undaunted that my friends at Osprey have just announced?
Yes, sir, I have. In fact, or wait, yes. So David was talking about that. Yes, is that okay to talk about? Because he mentioned, I asked him about it, and he told me, because I asked him if it was solo capable, and he answered me, but he said, "Please don't spread this," so I didn't say anything about it.
No, like since then it's been announced, and no, Stalingrad is not solo capable simply because just to support the 20-something scenarios between Normandy and North Africa, we had to make more than 100 solo cards. And then to support I don't want to say a number, how many missions Stalingrad will have, and then all the combinations of how the campaign can unfold. Then David Digby and the team at Osprey sat down and they're like, could we do it? Possibly. There will be people that grow old during the testing, and the box that's already quite more expensive than all the other Undaunted games because it's full of stuff to handle all the situations would be to increase in price by another $20-$30. So it's like,
I get it. I totally get it. Yeah, because I own all three of the Undaunted games right now. I've got North Africa, Normandy, and Reinforcements. And I'm looking at the Reinforcements box right now, and it's easily maybe a quarter or a half as large as the other boxes. And when I got that really surprised me. I thought, wow, that's a lot of content.
It fits all three of them together. And Stalingrad will be much bigger than that.
I bet.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's a must buy for me. Even if it doesn't have a solo mode, I'm perfectly fine with that because if
they go back to making small Undaunted games, then I've been told I'll be called again.
No problem.
Yeah, David Thompson was a guest on our podcast a few episodes ago. So
he's great.
He's a great friend of the pod. Yeah, he's awesome.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the Battle for Stalingrad. That you mentioned, David, is definitely on my list for when it comes out, just because it exists. I mean, I'm a sucker for him, as I said. So
cool.
I too just want to say that I want to be part of the cool kids and say that I too have Normandy and North Africa and just got a copy of Reinforcements. And I'm looking into, apparently there's some errata that I need to update. So I'm going to just focus on that and dive into that hopefully within the next couple of weeks. As for me, what have I been playing recently? Like Michael. I haven't had a lot of time, and as you know, motivation has been a factor. This is something that we solo gamers struggle with, as we all know, as regular listeners know and can align with. So, I'm trying my best. What have I got on the table right now, right as we speak? I've got the game called Earth, which is on Kickstarter right now. It's a tableau builder, engine builder. It's got card drafting. It's got a nature theme. It's very, very appealing, from a graphical standpoint. And it's on Kickstarter right as we're recording. I don't know if it'll still be on Kickstarter. I think it's got about like 17 days left, if I'm not mistaken. And it's very successful. But I backed it and I made myself a preview copy, print and play, so that I could try it, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit. It's kind of like the shorthand for it is it's kind of like Wingspan, only there's more going on, and I kind of agree with that. So that's on the table right now, right this second.
Is it okay to ask questions about it? Because I was literally staring at it today, whether I should back it or not.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I mean, because I loved Terraforming Mars for years until the expansions slowly destroyed the game.
Right.
And I've played Ark Nova 2-3 times, and it's really nice. It's not heavy euro enough for me to change my life, but I understand why the people who enjoy this really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I will probably end up owning it. And I obviously like it more mechanically than base Terraforming Mars, but on some things it does less smoothly. And Wingspan, like, I've played it with friends at conventions. I've owned it at one point. I might own it again now. I don't know. With my partner, I don't have a complete control over my collection. But like, it's not the kind of game I would ask for. It's not a quality judgment. It's just I'm a heavy kind of person. Like, is it what's the word I'm looking for? Is it involved enough, or is it just really nice and really enjoyable for people who want nice tableau building?
Yeah, great question. I think that it's definitely a step up from your Wingspan level. I think it definitely sits somewhere around the mid-weight, complexity. I don't think it's as crunchy as Terraforming Mars, especially if you throw in some of the more convoluted expansions in there.
Yeah,
and I don't think
convoluted expansions, because they're not good.
they do. They do tend to destroy the game, as you said. And I don't think it's going to be as heavy as Ark Nova. That said, I'm still waiting for my pre-order of Ark Nova to arrive from Game Nerds. But it is so. Yeah, I would say somewhere in between the complexity of an Ark Nova and a Wingspan, somewhere in the middle there. So yeah, but I like it.
Somebody somewhere one day will make a the Vital Lacerda or Simone Luciani or Alexander Pfister complexity Ark Nova plus for me, and that day I will die happy.
Oh, you mentioned the magic words. Luciani is my favorite right now.
Oh, then I will definitely not tell you about the game I'm designing with him.
Yeah, I think we can go down that rabbit hole, but let me finish my what else have I been playing?
I will hijack every possible topic I can hijack.
That's fine. You've hijacked it so much, and we appreciate it, and we haven't even gotten a chance to have our legally mandated mention of Aliens the movie, as we do every episode. Anyway, I've also gotten, just really quickly, I've been on a kick of like out of print worker placement games. So I learned recently about Automania, which is kind of like a entry level, gateway level worker placement game that I was curious about, and it's got an auto theme, so it's kind of like a Kanban light. So I made a copy of that with fan-made solo mode, and that was a good time, and then I also found out that Michael Kiesling and Wolfgang Kramer designed a game called Coal Baron back in 2013 that has actual elevators on the player boards look like mine shafts with a working elevator tile up the middle. And I'm just like, okay, I got to try this game out. And again, it's kind of like in that, 2.5 complexity, 2.7 complexity, kind of at the level of a Stone Age or a Lords of Waterdeep. But it's got its own thing. And I love the theme. I love the kind of 1800s Germany coal mining theme. So that's been what I've been playing. Michael, over to you.
I do have one other question, and I apologize for hijacking this right here at this point, but I'm dying to know. Just curious, David, have you? Well, I know you have, but I'm just curious. What if you could talk about it? The game called Legacy of Thrax. Have you? Are you designing or are you helping design the solo mode on that one? It's about to hit Kickstarter here anytime now.
I don't want to use too strong words because I don't remember what I agreed with the guy who am I terribly blanking my his
Balázs.
Yes, he's
Sveda, something
even
like
Hungarian. So
yes,
I should remember names better. I'm bad at that. A few years from now, you and I are gonna have a chat, and you'll mention that we've talked for hours, and I'll be like, that's you. So yeah, no, I forget everyone. He called me up wanting to hire me for a solo mode, and I was like, I'm busy, show me your game, let's see what we can do. Showed me his game. I did what I always do, and basically my process of development is to complain about everything. I understand what you're doing, but why isn't that better? And then some games that works with, and then he was very receptive, and then because I knew I didn't have the time and the resources to do the full bells and whistles solo mode, I have this alternative method called the teach a man a fish. No, teach a man to fish, yes, instead of giving them a fish. And I was like, you've played this game a million times. I will be lucky if I have time to play it once. But if I were to design a solo mode for it, these were the patterns I would use.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then he called me back 3 months later saying, I've played the solo mode and it actually works. And I'm like, yes, but did you replicate that part of your game? Did you replicate that part of your game? It was like, well, that one, yes, but that one I forgot. I'm like, well, then don't make it complicated, but put that other token there and it'll work. And he went like, you're right. So I consulted on its solo mode. I need the Deer Hunter hat, but that is something. There are games out there that I have designed the solo mode of that I've never played. So it is a thing I do because to me this is theory, and I'm sure you'll have a million questions about this. So would I can I say it's an amazing game? It looked good. He did his homework, he thought it through. I wouldn't put my name even on a consulting thing if I thought the game was crap. So it's definitely much better than that. And he's been really enthusiastic. And whenever first time, especially self-publishers approach me, I tend to be extremely careful because even the best meaning one of them might be just a harmless amateur. So I'm always like, first show me that you can do this and then I'll help you do it better. But Balázs has been doing his job very well, and like he listened, and the things he said on the second call made me feel like that he understands what's going on, and therefore people who enjoy this sort of gaming, the like Heroes of Might and Magic, the board game style of gaming where you move around, like I'm comparing it to the video game, not to the board game. I've never played the board game, where you move your unit around and get stuff and then get bigger stuff and then you punch other stuff. And like it has a Ameritrash tinge to it, but it's low randomness enough that it didn't feel like, silly resolution. So, best of luck to him. And good. And the game has every reason to exist, and I hope the notes I gave him will make it a great solo mode.
Very good. Well, I appreciate that. Yes, it is. I only ask and call it out because I helped him by rewriting the story to it, the backstory to it. So
I'm very happy that Balázs is smart enough to ask for smart people's help.
I wish I could have helped him with the rule book. I offered to do that, but I just didn't have time to smooth it out.
I know the feeling.
Whatever, so
another small semi self-publisher. I had even more meetings because that game I got unreasonably passionate about for how little time I had for it. Was from the designer of Donning the Purple. He's doing a game about a Norwegian village being overrun by Germans in the Second World War.
Yeah, and it's Petter Shanke Olsen. I love his game.
And he's doing Halls of Hegra. It's also coming sometime in late spring, early summer. I don't remember what date he was advertising. Basically, it's mechanically, not thematically. Mechanically, it's the game I wanted Robinson Crusoe to be.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because Robinson Crusoe is something that I really like on paper, and I really don't like playing it.
You know, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. Those weather dice can go eat a unpleasant
a
thing.
hedgehog. They can go eat a hedgehog. Yes, exactly. So
that's exciting.
And it was interesting to me because he designed it as a solo game, and I don't design solo games. My job is to simulate a multiplayer opponent or game level pressure in an automa. So I was like, you're not asking David Turczi, the solo mode architect, you're asking David Turczi, the game developer, on how he would make the game better. So I just told him to go buy Days of Ire, and then after he played it, I was like, so see, this and this works amazingly in your game, but do you see how this exact thing is in Days of Ire, but yours does silly things occasionally? And then he went, and he went back, and like I actually had time to play that game once a few months later, and it was like, wow, this is great. And I don't even play, like, it's a one player co-op, so but it's really good. And like, again, the game I wish Robinson Crusoe to be.
That's cool. That's really great insight there.
Now I've done 2 unpaid promos of small self-publishers that were nice enough to talk to me. So hey, small self-publishers, talk to me, because I like.
No, that's great. Petter Shanka Olsen is a great friend of the print and play community. I'm very heavily into print and play. I have my own Facebook group about it, and I host the print and play group on BGG. And he's just been, I mean, that's how I came to know of Donning the Purple, because I'm like, this game is available as a print and play, and then I played it like 4 years ago and was blown away. And then Michael, we reviewed Donning the Purple on the show a few episodes ago, right?
Yes,
did we in fact give it the stamp of approval? I don't recall.
We did not. No,
we did not. Okay, I don't recall exactly where the issues, but it's still a great game. All right. That's awesome, and we've already kind of covered a lot of ground here, but which, as you know, David, you did give us fair warning, and that's fine. So Michael, you want to go to the interview proper?
Absolutely. So we have kind of started the interview process by asking questions, but let's go ahead and begin that officially now.
But hey, we were talking about games, and isn't that what we're all here for?
Exactly. Yes.
Exactly.
I can give you my bio and my epic origin story, but talking about games is where the fun is.
Very true. Well, we so sorry, going up there. So David Turczi, originally from Hungary, lived in the UK for a time, now residing in the Netherlands. He has designed, co-designed, consulted, given advice, and made solo modes for an unbelievable number of games in over a decade.
Yeah, so I was looking at your BGG profile yesterday, and I mean, just like, it's not only is it the longest and most detailed profile I've ever seen on BGG.
I haven't updated it in a year. I have a to-do literally in my top list to update that, because because the last year is on that profile.
Exactly. You say upcoming titles, and then the first one is Imperium Classics and Imperium Legends, which, as we know, is already out there and making great waves and getting very popular. And you've also designed or co-designed on the T series of games. So, and I really want to make Michael pronounce these. Teotihuacan?
I did the solo mode for. I did not design Teotihuacan. Please don't confuse that.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, Daniele Tascini is the designer.
Yes.
Tawantinsuyu, Inca Empire?
That's one I actually designed.
Right. Tekenu, Obelisk of the Sun, another co-design with Daniele.
No, that is the co-design. All the others are not.
All right. And so many games. So we're not going to go through, folks who are listening.
Most people know me as the guy from Anachrony. So
yes, absolutely.
That's the pin on my jacket.
The pin on your jacket. Very, very well said. So, yeah, Anachrony is, of course, an amazing, super heavy Euro with an incredible...
It's not.
Kind of,
it's just 4-dimensional Lords of Waterdeep.
Okay. Thank you. So, anyway, you've just made so many things.
By a long, long margin.
Uh-huh. Okay. So, let's just dive into the first question here. David Turczi, how did you first get involved in game design?
Early years of university, I got bored of Munchkin, and then somebody bought me Battlestar Galactica, the board game, because that was my favorite TV series. And then for about 2 years, replayed that, I don't know, 40, 50 plus times. I only started logging the games through the last few months of the Battlestar binge, so I don't know. It's lost to the prehistoric times. But one summer day, I want to say 2010, but it might have been 2009 or 2011 because I'm too old and I don't remember. My good friend Mihai Vince, or Mityu as we call him, came home from a family holiday saying, well, I tried to teach my family Battlestar Galactica, but that didn't quite work out. And I had a deck of French cards with me, so I had to design something simpler. So for the next year, every time we got together to play Battlestar Galactica, we first played Mityu's game, as we called it at the time. And then me being me and interrupting everybody and having thoughts and opinions about everyone and everything, I kept asking, wouldn't this be better if it was like that? Wouldn't this be better if it was like that? And then through a series of extremely random and lucky encounters, the game got published in 2013 under the name Redacted.
So that was Redacted.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right.
Awesome. So it was Mityu who got me into game design, and I was extremely happy that after and I did Days of Fire with him and Kate Nimafro as well, the same team that did Redacted. And then after I went nosedive into the world of madness and Mityu pretended to be a normal human being for a few years, we caught up last year and chatted about what he would be up to, and now he's one of the test leads and the rulebook writers of Minecraft games, and I work with him every day on Void Force, so we came full circle on that.
That's awesome. By the way, we did call out the rule books, the 3 rule books of Days of Ire, as really incredible work and should be a model for
throughout. That's his detail to attention. So now you know that Voidfall will be at that good, but with 6 years more experience and the entire Minecraft team added to it, so even better.
Wow. Okay, Voidfall. Watch out for that one. Make a note.
I mean, right. Did you miss it the last time we made $1 million or 2 on it?
I must have missed it. I mean, there's so much, and Michael and I, and you can probably align with this. We have so many board games on our respective shelves of unplayed games. Michael, over to you.
So you might have answered this question already, David. You mentioned Munchkin. Was that your first board game purchase ever? I'm just curious.
Yes, first one ever. What you would categorize as modern board games? Yes, Munchkin was my first purchase, but obviously me being obsessive and needing everything, but also quickly analyzing, I had the problem of play Munchkin, like it for lack of references, then buy a ton more Munchkin, then realize, wait, no, this is very samey. We need something, smarter. Right. So I technically come from the Ameritrasher angle. So after Battlestar Galactica, the next game was Game of Thrones. But ironically, as my taste evolved, like today, I can't sit down to any of those anymore. And it's not a game length issue, but like a thought. What's the word I'm looking for? Density. It's like a thinking pattern density kind of situation. Like experience-driven games are like, oh my god, I'm bored. Oh my god, I'm bored. Whereas heavy strategy games give this long curve burn where like 2/3 the way through you suddenly feel smart, and then 90% way through your brain realizes that it's been starving for an hour. So So that's where I come from, but that's not where I am today.
I understand. That's a good way of putting it. I'd never really thought of it that way before. I think part of my own love of board games is chasing the nostalgia tale of what used to really keep me engaged. Back when I was 18, 19, 20 and had all the time in the world before I, had bills and responsibilities, and, finding these games and playing and spending hours and just being immersed in them. And then suddenly, if I put that same game on my table today, I'd be just disappointed, I think, which is a real shame, but that's just the way it is. I mean,
the only game I'm still willing to spend 4+ hours on regularly would be Dominant Species.
That's a GMT title, is it not?
Yeah, I've played Marine once before lockdown, and like 80% of the game was like a massive improvement from an already perfect game, and then there are like 2 new sources of randomness in it, which I was like, I don't understand why they put this here. But like, if I had time on my hand and I would be playing the game regularly, then I would like cut myself a rule set that's like 80% marine, 20% original.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'll have to check that out again. I've
It's
looked at it before.
Great game.
Cool. Yeah, I've seen it before. I've just never. I was like, oh, that's not a war game. I'm not going to pay attention to that. But my tastes have changed recently.
Well, it's not a war game for simulation's sake. It's a war game for like it's a strategy game with a warlike experience.
Okay,
nice.
I'll check that out.
Which is how I would describe Days of Fire, Knights of Fire, and Defense of Procyon 3 as well, which are my quote-unquote war games. They are they're warros. They are Euro games about shooting.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Just in case of dominant species, instead of shooting, you eat them. But you get it.
So I've been wanting to ask you this question for the longest time. So what's your philosophy toward game design in general? And then obviously you are one of the most, as we said earlier, kind of celebrated, folks who adapt these games for solo modes. The follow-up question there is, what makes you decide? Because for me, the reference is like, if you're looking at a solo mode from the Automa Factory, say, Jamie Stegmaier, Stonemaier Games, they have a certain style, right? And then you experience it, and then you try to experience another game by them, and it's like, oh, that's Automa Factory. That's what they do, right? That's how they develop a solo mode. That's how they think about it.
I'm the same. It's just I have 2 or 3 styles depending on the game.
Right. So the question is, like, because in Days of Ire, you did an AI deck, right? Zhukov deck. And that's kind of like, I like that. I like the AI deck. I think I like the feeling of I want to flip over a card, do what it tells me to do, and then not have a lot of extra overhead, right? As the solo player. But then,
big background. I don't play solo games at all. Like, never. It's mostly to do with me needing to talk to somebody about everything all the time. And if I start talking to myself and the other half of my brain and my bot opponent at the same time, then I do sound like a complete crazy straight jacket escapee. And I play accordingly badly, and I don't enjoy that. So why did I end up doing these solo mods? Because Anachrony, we didn't know how big a success would be, and the guys at Mindclash asked me for more non-component upgrade stretch goal suggestions, and I said, let's make a solo mod, why not? And they were like, solo mod, what's that? I don't know, I just got this game Viticulture or something on Kickstarter. The people say it has a solo mod, let's try it out. And I played it, and I've had this conversation with Morten a lot of times since, and we're work acquaintances, and I would like to say convention friends. Right. This is not even about talking whether you like viticulture or not. The question that got stuck in my mind is that the solo mode is less fun than the multiplayer game. Correct. Because at the time I had the patience and the appropriate playgroup with, I played viticulture a few times, and I had a above average winning rate. Maybe my old gaming groups used to be easier than my current ones. I haven't won a game in months. Anywho, but against the bot, it was not the quality of my strategy that decided whether I won or lost. Obviously, if I made a mistake, I could do worse. Right. But there was nothing I could do to do better.
Correct.
Because I was like, I need to do A, B, and C. Flip a card. Oops, you can't do A. Oh.
Right.
Whereas when I would make this plan in multiplayer, and if I don't get A, I'm losing, then the first thing I would do is I would look at my opponent's board and go, is there any chance my opponent is taking A? And therefore, I came up with this idea of there has to be predictability. When I play against an opponent, if the game has enough interactions for it to matter, then I'm usually able to roughly guesstimate what interaction will happen at me, which spot they'll block, which card they'll buy from the market, which whatever that game does.
Right.
And the very first version of Automa Factory of Morten's AI did not have this. Since then, he does it too. With Gaia Project, he and I learned from each other. Gaia Project was the first Automa Factory that had the level of predictability that I would insist on. And then and by today's standards, my original Anachronism solo mode was terrible, which is why we remade it in the Fractures expansion. We remade the entire solo mode from scratch. It looks the same and does the same thing, but the
Right.
way it picks actions is completely, way it picks how many actions it picks is completely different.
Yeah, that's the chronosis, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
And
yes.
at the same time, we were working on Days of Fire. And on Days of Fire, we didn't do an automa. Back then, I didn't know it was called that. We didn't do an automa because we were like, well, the Soviet half is essentially Twilight Struggle, and you can't make Twilight Struggle into a solo game. So how about we replace it with a pandemic-like deck that occasionally kicks you in the behind?
Right.
And the third game I was working on at the same time was Petrichor for my good friend David Kirkhope. And that game was massively simpler than Anachrony. In the end, not by a lot, but the target audience for it was lighter. And like, we can't do that big thing. So I came up with I tried to go back to that flip a card, do a thing, right?
Right.
But predictability is important to me. In Days of Fire, and Days of Fire was before I laid down my own rules, but in Days of Fire, predictability comes from the support track. If it's red, you know you're gonna get hit. If it's green, you know you're gonna get hit less. And you can count, because there's only 14 cards, you can count the major and minor icons on the bottom of the deck. We put it in the rulebook how many of those there are. But with Petrichor, I went one step further. Sure, your opponent can take any action any given time, but over a round, I know they're not gonna take the frost action 6 times. They're going to take 1 or 2, maybe 3 frost actions here or there. So I did a tiny deck, 8 cards plus a reshuffle card, and there were 2 of each actions in it. Which meant that by looking at the discard pile, which was literally half of the deck at any given time, you would have an almost 50% chance of guessing what its next 2 actions going to be.
Right.
And obviously it was an early work, so it had other problems which we've since fixed, but every time I saw what worked better and better, and then the breakthrough was I was on the development and testing team for Teotihuacan, and while working on my own Dice Settlers, and Dice Settlers was on Kickstarter, so it needed a solo mode. We did it. We worked a ton on it. It was like a rondel that was simpler than Anachronism, but similar kind of smarts. And then both games were finished, and then we had 2 weeks left until Teotihuacan had to be handed over to the graphics and translation team, and I was like, hey guys, should I make a solo mode for it? And they were like, nah, it doesn't need one. It's not Kickstarter, nobody cares. I'm like, I have 2 weeks, you've already paid for my time, I might as well make a solo mode. And that was the first game that I did after Dice Settlers, Petrichor, Days of Fire, and Anachrony has all finished.
Right.
And at the time I didn't yet know this, but my brain put these cogwheels together.
Yeah.
And that's how simplicity, predictability, and no counterplay choices became the 3 core tenets of what I consider automa design. And where the style difference between Morten and I is that he starts with, let's do it as simple as possible, which is why it usually boils down to a card flip.
Right.
And then simulate things we have to, like the unit movement on site, and ignore things we don't have to. Whereas I go the other way around. I'm like, everything that I care about you doing, we simulate, and then we start cutting if it's too complicated.
Right.
So I don't care how you get your 3 gold to buy the decoration tile, but I do care about, do you have 3 gold right now, or can I wait another turn buying the decoration tile?
Gotcha.
So that's where it all comes from.
That's really fascinating. And I mean, like that answer right there, and your 3 like kind of central principles, which is very different from the Automa Factory. I mean, I learned a lot, right? Just quick follow up before I turn it back over to Michael. Like, how do you kind of respond to I wouldn't call them criticisms, but like some folks have said that, and you said you have 2 to 3 different styles of Automa. Now, me as a solo player, primarily a solo player, I only play with family like once a year, like at around the holidays. And then Michael, I think you're the same, right? I find, especially like the more I go into it, the less kind of brain power I have to spend on it. I used to be able to like play 2 to 3 characters simultaneously, whatever, in a game, and now I'm like, I can't do it. It's just too much for me. So now, like, I really look for a true solo mode for a purchase and for something that actually gets to my table. Just because I'm trying to minimize the cognitive load. So how do you kind of respond to comments that, like, some of your solo modes
are too much work to run?
Right. Yeah. How do you respond to that?
There are games where, looking back, I feel I overdid it. Teotihuacan being the best example, that Tekkenu's solo mode is essentially the exact same solo mode as Teotihuacan's, is just simpler. Mm-hmm. So if I was designing Teotihuacan's solo mode today, it would be just as smart as it is, but as simple to run as Tekkenu's. So I am not saying I can't improve them, but I also want to very categorically state that sometimes that complexity is a feature, not a bug.
Right.
The best example for this would be the other two Mind Clash games, other than Anachrony, Tricarion and Cerebria, both designed by Victor Peter and Richard Amen. And especially Tricarion, but I really like Cerebria as well, but especially the Tricarion, their beauty comes from the everything linked together and everything matters, and you have a reason to care about everything.
Right.
Now, if I do a solo game with the same components, or a dumb bot that sets a ticking clock and you must score 10 points before that clock runs out, then I've butchered 85% of the game out.
Right.
The job of my solo mode is to make your strategizing in the solo game as rich, as replayable, as rewarding, as interactive as if you were playing against a human opponent. Mm-hmm. And sure, I should keep it as streamlined as possible, and my earlier attempts were not streamlined enough, and I am getting better at them, and occasionally it still carries me a little bit too far. But on some games it's a feature, which is why I'm really, really happy with what we've done on Voidfall, because Voidfall is, a Euro space empire builder where essentially everybody's building their own stuff. There is a map, and you can attack each other, but that's not what the game is about. That's just a pressure point out of a few other card markets and event pickings. Which meant that we knew from the start that making an automa for this is impossible, because if you don't simulate every aspect of your empire, of your opponent's empire, then it's just a number. And if you do simulate it, then you're going to do 20 things that you don't actually care about for the bot. And because of that, the map that is filled with relatively weak neutral enemies in competitive, instead of creating an automa for it, we created a mode where the neutral enemy comes alive.
Right.
Gotcha. And then it's almost like having Through the Ages and Spirit Island in the same box, instead of writing an AI that can play Through the Ages. Makes sense?
That's fascinating. So, thank you so much.
I understand what you mean by less cognitive load and a quote-unquote true solo mode, but if I make a competitive automa, then I need to give back the exact same pressure points, the exact same choices, while abstracting internal bookkeeping of the bot as much as possible.
Yeah.
Or I need to create what I call a co-op solo mode, which is sometimes a solo mode, sometimes a 1 to 4 player solo mode, is that provides the same pressure points as the competitive game, but plays completely differently. I first succeeded with it in Yido Deluxe, designed by my good friends Thomas van der Hinste and Wolf Plank, the same guys we worked together on Perseverance. And the game is often sold as Lords of Waterdeep on steroids. Mm-hmm. And 85% of the game I really love. And the last 15% is a randomly drawn card motivating you to go to certain actions that may or may not succeed depending on whether others go there or not. Mm-hmm. And I always found that a little bit too random. It's like, oh, had I known you had that card, obviously I wouldn't have gone there. Mm-hmm. But by turning the game against the players and said, show each other the cards, figure it out who goes where, the game's still gonna kick you, I love the co-op mode of it. Of course, it's easy to praise my own work, but the idea was that I didn't have to change anything. It's the same game.
Mm-hmm.
Just instead of the two of us accidentally hurting both of us, it's the game kicking us all. and that's what made me realize that co-op and competitive is just a matter of who puts the pressure on.
Right. Wow. Okay, this has been fascinating. And I mean, like, Michael, I'm going to pass it on to you. You got another question there.
All right. So with so many game designs and design collaborations to your name, what one would you say you're the most proud of if you just had to pick one?
Can I pick one in each category so I can take 10 minutes about it?
He's already working with the rules of this interview.
Very true.
I mean, I have to explore the design space. Come on.
You can talk about whatever you like.
Designs. Sure. This is an impossible question.
Design to constraints, David. Design to constraints.
With my own, ever since I've gone professional, I am lucky enough to say that I was never forced to let anything go that I wasn't standing behind with all of my shoulders. So, Tavantinci, Tekenu, Perseverance, Procyon, Excavation Earth, Anachrony, they are all feel like personal triumphs for completely different reasons. Mm-hmm. So I can't say which one is my favorite or my most proud or my best. With solo modes, it's a bit easier because they are more like engineering jobs than artist little babies. I tend to name Knights of Fire because based on what I knew about solo mode design at the time, Knights of Fire could not have a solo mode. Mm-hmm. And it does. Sure, Cerebria pushed through because Cerebria was the first area control game I did, but Cerebria was like big, and the solo mode for it was also very big, and Knights of Fire was not meant to be that big, so making a working area control direct shooting game AI in just 12 cards and nothing else, that was a surprise to me. Today, most of my current solo modes trace back their lineage to Foundation of Rome, and which still not out, so nobody knows why I love that solo mode so much, and Kanban EV. Mm-hmm. Because the way when I started working with more and more designer solo modes, more and more of them have this, what I consider a very silly constraint. They don't want a dice in their game. And I'm like, I'm not putting a dice in the game, I'm just randomizing your opponent's first, second, and third choice using a weighted die. And they're like, yeah, we can't have a die in our game. And I think, I'm not sure, but if I remember correctly, it was a conversation with Emerson during Foundation of Rome, where I don't remember who said what exactly, but after that conversation, I redesigned that solo mode where you flip one card, where you have 3 cards out face up. And in the olden days, I would have rolled a die and said 1, 2, 3 does the first card, 4, 5 does the second card, and 6 does the third card. Or in Knights of Fire, there's a more complicated version where some cards are face down and their odds are sliding, whatever.
Yeah.
And Foundations of Rome had this trick where you have 3 cards out, and then when it's the bot's turn, you flip a card face up, and it says which of the 3 cards to resolve. You toss that card, you slide, and you put the newly flipped card in its place. And Kanban EV's solo mode is entirely built on this. Perseverance's solo mode is mostly built on this. Railways of the World is entirely built on this. And yeah, we've just used it in 2 other games that I can't yet say. So
nice.
So that was a true breakthrough moment. I still do state engine solo modes every now and then. Anachrony and Dice Settlers are my state engine games, but those tend to get easily complicated, so I only go to a state engine if I really have to. And then the third option is to use the tiny decks, which, as I said, Petrichor was a little bit too fiddly, too often to shuffle, but with the variants and later expansions we fixed that. But Excavation Earth has a solo mode where you just flip a card from a deck, but the composition of the deck is different in the first round, in the second round, and the third round. And whatever cards didn't come out in the first round gets shuffled in with the second round's cards. So
nice.
that simulates how a human changes from early game strategy to late game strategy.
Right. Yeah, that's cool.
And because it's still just 6 cards, which are written on the rulebook explicitly, you can, and I encourage you to go and count. So Snipe and Advertise have come out, so there is 2 dig and 1 black market left in the deck. Because that's how I would predict what my opponent would do. He already dug, he already bought that, so I'm guessing he's gonna do that now,
Yeah, that's very, very cool.
And I've just reused that Excavation Earth idea in a game that you've heard about, but you don't know that I'm doing the solo mode for it yet, and I can't tell you.
Okay. David, I'm sorry, Michael, you just recently acquired Excavation Earth, did you not?
Yes, I did. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, unfortunately, but it fascinated me just from so I mentioned this in a previous episode. There's actually a book called Motel of the Mysteries that came out in the 80s, I think, and it's mostly a hand-drawn picture book, but it's telling the story of archaeologists in the far future doing a dig on a area that was previously unknown, and it's like modern times today. So they're finding like a highway cloverleaf and shops, and they don't have any clue what these things are. And they find a motel, and it focuses on this motel, but they don't know what it is. They don't think it's a motel. They think it's a like a temple of some kind. And the people that are long gone inside of it were worshiping at the altar of this television. They think it's some kind of religious device, and it's fascinating.
Send me the link.
What's that?
Send me a link of this thing. I need it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'll do that. I'll definitely do that. It's a great book. I loved it because it was just like, it's funny how you put different perspectives in mindset, and you can see this far future mindset. Well, yeah, I guess I would think the same thing, which makes me think about modern times when you're going out on archaeological sites and they dig up, oh, this is where they smashed the wheat, or this is where they baked their goods, or this is where they held their animals. Well, how do you know that? Were you there? I mean, I guess you could tell that from artifacts and such, but it's just kind of funny that makes you think. It makes you wonder, maybe that's not quite the way it was supposed to be. But yeah, so I do have Excavation Earth that reminded me of that book, and I was like, this is definitely something I want to play, and now I should probably.
If you try out the game, I hope you'll like it. And while the solo mode will look like it's a bit high maintenance, but actually all the high maintenance just comes down to checking 3 or 4 priority lists that most people tell me you don't even have to memorize it, because by the third game it's obvious. But the more and more people played it, we had some feedbacks that the bot is unnaturally good at one of the area controls of the game, but the rulebook for the expansion which was on Kickstarter, and you find the link, contains 1 line rule change that makes the bot behave well and you don't need the expansion for the rule change, it's just in there. So if you do try it out, then try it out with the new rule, because it's just better.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you.
I do want to emphasize that with the point that David just made, right? Like, with respect to Paolo Mori's Blitzkrieg, which David did the solo mode for, and I did have a similar experience.
The sequel, Caesar, which is just coming out now, and it's, I think, even better than Blitzkrieg.
Well, that's a great recommendation, because I already had a lot of fun with Blitzkrieg. But the experience of getting intimidated by what looks like a very complicated flowchart, right, or decision tree, but then once you actually just play it a couple of times, you're like, oh, this makes sense, and then you almost don't even, after a while, you almost don't even have to look at the.
Remember my third tenet of solo mode game design? What I said?
What did you say?
No counterplay choices. So the way simple games get their solo modes is, okay, you took your turn. What should I do? And then I played the game with somebody who knows the game quite. This is how Undaunted solo mode was played. It's like, I played with the lead developer. He took a turn, and I was like, okay, what are the possible turns I should take now that are not completely insane? And I wrote down every option he said. And then I said, all right, I'm going to roll a die. If I roll 1, I'm going to take this turn. If I roll 2, I'm going to take this turn. And then eventually that comes down into a better form and a solo mode. So, because Blitzkrieg is so simple and again, this is not a quality judgment. This is a, like the actual choices you make is, do I put this tile down or do I put that tile down?
Right.
Therefore, the only possible way the solo mode could work is if you as a player had this and this option to choose from, and your personal priority was randomly picked from this list, then this would be the only sane move for you to make.
Right.
So by limiting the options of the bot randomly, i.e. the cheat pool, and then randomizing it inside the motivation, i.e. the strategy tile, after those two things are determined, there is a correct answer. So if we were in the 90s, I would have said, now that this is determined, put the tile wherever it's best for your opponent. But that goes against my tenet of no counterplay decisions. Therefore, there's the flowchart of what I and the people I played with considered the best move in that circumstance.
Right. No, that's really, really cool. All right. I'm going to skip question number 5 because I think the answer is obvious. I think that it's very, very clear that David is working on many, many, many different designs at the same time. So
I am currently playtesting 3 games pre publisher finalizing and one or 2 post finalizing. I am conceptualizing 3 games that aren't playable yet, and on top of this, I'm working on 4 more solo modes actively and another dozen passively, or just talking to other people that are working on it.
Yeah, that's crazy. So it puts into sharp relief why you don't really have time to play just for fun anymore.
Or sleep.
Or sleep. There you go. What is one game that you wish you had designed, and why?
Well, if you've paid attention to me in the past hour of rambling, that you know the answer to that.
I was already suspecting that I do know the answer, but could you refresh our memory?
It is obviously Concordia.
There you
go. The other big theory I have, besides the solo game tenets that I already told you, is something that I don't remember whether I came up with on the spot for it or whether I came prepared, but one of my collaborators spotted me telling it in an interview in the past, and then he noted it down and pinned it to our chat room, so I can actually quote myself here, is the 6 quality points of an integrated design. And these obviously only apply to a certain heaviness and upwards, because this is not something you would check code names against or whatever. It's just my work doesn't work for that. Narrative integration, how much sense does it make what you do? Elegance, what is the ratio of rules to depth of the game? Strategic curve, as in how many things can you do, how different do those things feel, and how many ways can you execute those things, i.e. how replayable is the game independent of content. Sense of achievement, did you do something? Do you feel like you've built something? Do you feel like you're better at the end than at the beginning? Did you have fun if you've just lost? Interaction between player to player, do you care what I do, and do you have to create a strategy with cases for what I might do? And finally, the least important quality of a game is how unique is it. If a game is exactly like every other game but better in all of them, then I will pick that game. Whereas if there's a super unique game that has a pointless middle system, then I will not. And Concordia, other than the narrative integration, which it just doesn't have, on the other 5 points, gets maximum marks from me.
Right.
And I try to design games so that when all is said and done, and when I put the published game down on the table, I can claim that out of the 6 criteria, I can get a B+ or an A on, I don't know, 3 or 4, or on a good day 5 of them. In my mind, Concordia has an A+ on 5 out of the 6.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I need to get this game. No question. Michael,
I've played that game dozens of times, and every time other people still surprise me.
All right, Hyperborea first, and then Concordia second. Michael, maybe we're coming up on the hour and a half mark here, so maybe 2 more questions, and then we're out.
Okay. Let's see here. Well, let's ask this. So tell me something, David. What outside of board gaming influences you most in design?
What
I
do you
know
mean
board.
outside of board gaming? There
Yeah.
is a
Is there
world
anything
outside
outside?
of board gaming.
That's the world, right? There's nothing else.
Well, I don't know. Every time I go outside, I suddenly a new uh, inspiration strikes, and then I go and design a new game. But luckily, I don't go outside much.
So it's just randomness that strikes you.
Yeah.
Random. Yeah. See, I can appreciate that. I do that a lot in my day job. So I'm an instructional designer, as is Martin. So we often have that happen to us. So how am I going to present this training? Oh yeah, let me do this. Let me do some silly 80s
I mean, that's how it started. Now,
Right.
after 3.5 years of doing this 8 days a week, it's mostly iterative or looking for holes in what other people have already done. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
like
Okay.
these days, I feel like I have a truly unique idea once a year, and I'm okay with that because I don't need more. The rest is just making existing things better.
Nice.
Right. Very good. Martin, you want to do
All
the
right.
last question?
Last question. If I am a aspiring board game designer,
Pick a different one.
No, okay. Well, so how do you feel about the number 10 question? What are the most essential tools that you find most helpful in your process?
Google Sheets.
That's it.
Google Sheets is the single greatest tool of mankind. But about a year ago, I learned basic skills in design, and then this year I added some. Well, not this year, but like last few months ago, I added some very extremely basic skills in Illustrator, and I mean those two things have changed my life because I do complex stuff, and while I was doing them, making them up as I go, there would always be a point where the game finally starts working, but nobody can play a whole game without having 200 rule questions to me. And then I would spend the next X months cutting out of the game and then swearing every time one of my cuts breaks the game. Mm-hmm. Whereas now, I'm not a graphic designer. Everything I do is but ugly. But when I say I want 20 tiles, I say, how big is the board? How big is the tile going to be? How many icons can I print on that tile? How many things need unique colors in the game? Sure, the colors I pick are ugly. I'm not an artist. That's not my job. Mm-hmm. But information density is something I can design for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If the system I design is too complicated for my monkey vector graphics to accurately display, then they're too complicated.
Right.
And since then, the difference between my prototype and a playable game have shrunk several magnitudes. Sure, I waste a lot more time and I bin a lot more unfinished games because I just spent 2 days trying to mock it and it still makes zero sense to me. But I realize that it makes zero sense to me much quicker because I see it. Excel sheet is for numbers. Excel sheet is for listing out the possible things that could be on this card. But the first thing I do is I mock a very ugly board in Illustrator.
Nice.
So yeah, right. Excel,
very good,
and Illustrator and Google Sheets.
And InDesign are the two biggest. Well, not Excel, but Google Sheets, because you can collaboratively edit on it, and I collaborate on everything with everyone. So,
wow. Well,
don't lock me in a room and tell me to. Here is all the food come out when you design the game. I need to talk to somebody.
Well, just as we are about to go to the end of the show here, I'm just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, from the bottom of our hearts for coming on. This has been really deep, profound episode of Solosaurus that I'm going to listen to once we record it. once the recording is done, I'm going to be taking copious notes about the 6 points of game design that you mentioned, and as well as the 3 kind of solo tenets and core principles that you were very kind to share. Michael, I'm passing it over to you for the end of line.
Right, echoing what Martin said. Thank you very much for your time here today, David. We appreciate it. I'm sure the listeners do as well. So looking forward to listening.
Anyone
to this one.
Who's willing to let me talk this much, I'm happy to talk to.
Good. We definitely are. So I know people are definitely interested and going to like this episode. So that's great. So this wraps up episode 87 of the Solosaurus podcast. We are proud to be part of the Dice Tower Network, and for even more Solosaurus, join our post-show discussions and other shenanigans on Facebook at facebook.com/Solosaurus. Follow us on Instagram at Solosaurus Podcast, or shoot us an email at solosauruspodcast@gmail.com. And we also have a YouTube channel. The episodes are fully output to that channel. It's just there's no video. It's just a thumbnail placeholder, but you can listen to it there too if you'd like.
Don't worry, there's no video.
No.
All right. And you can also find us on Board Game Geek under podcasts and blogs. But, honestly, the fastest way to find us is just go and search for Solosaurus BGG in your favorite search engine, and you will find us. And if you, too, would like to sport your very own Solosaurus micro badge and show your love and appreciation for the show, hit me up on Board Game Geek. My handle is Dr. Henry Armitage. That's Dr. Henry Armitage, and I will spot you the Geek Gold so that you can have your very own Solosaurus micro badge.
And thanks again to Stone Valley Games for being our sponsor. As always, if there's any particular games you'd like us to take a look at, send us an email or drop us a message on social media. As always, I'm Michael Eckenfels.
I'm Martin Gonzalez.
Oh, and I'm David Turczi.
Thank you for listening.
Bye now.